When you go to hospital to give birth, you need a change of clothes, nappies, maternity pads, nipple cream. The checklist alone, I can see some people squirming around me here, the checklist alone can be overwhelming for a new mum. Now at my local hospital, you'll need to add your passport as well. South London's St George's Hospital is to start requiring expectant mothers to prove that they are British citizens or else pay for their treatment. The NHS says the plans are a welcome step to curb so-called health tourism. It says funding childbirth for foreign mothers costs the taxpayer £180 million a year. Whilst the evidence for that claim is patchy, the consequences of this horrendous idea are crystal clear. It's hard to think of anyone more vulnerable in this society than women on the verge of childbirth. Demanding passports in hospitals will create an atmosphere of hostility at a time when they need care. Worse still, it could deter some women from seeking antenatal care at all, creating a two-tier system where children are born with avoidable health problems and mothers' lives are put at risk. Is this seriously the kind of country we want to become?
Got a car?
Yeah.
If you broke down, do you think you'd have to pay to an emergency breakdown service?
Yeah.
Got a boiler?
Yeah.
If you want someone to come fix your boiler, do you think you should pay for a boiler breakdown service? Yep. OK. So why, when you pack your bag for your creams and your nappies and your everything else like that...
Are you equating the child of a foreign mother to a boiler or a car engine?
No, I'm using examples. Why shouldn't you have paid into the system so that you get the care?
The point I'm making is not about the principle of people who aren't entitled to free care not paying for it. The point I'm making is the cost. So, first of all...
Well, that's the point I'm making. So perhaps you'd like to address my question.
How many foreign mothers are currently being treated for maternity services on the NHS?
I haven't got a program.
Nobody knows.
OK.
Nobody
but
knows.
One is too many.
Because the government hasn't done the research.
Well,
I'm saying...
Well, one hospital trust, which I think is your local one, has got like 4.5 million... If I'm right with the figures, 4.5 million per annum.
I don't know the integrity of that data because there's not been any official study.
You've got to believe some figures.
How can you introduce a policy so draconian that you potentially put the lives of infants at risk?
What's draconian?
Draconian is taking a woman who is about to give birth and potentially deterring her from having treatment.
Afua.
That is draconian, and you wouldn't do it until you had solid evidence.
I defer to you. Sorry, just give me this. I
defer.
defer to you because obviously, although my ex-wife and I did it twice, you were the woman you'll remember. As I recall, you go to the hospital, you present yourself when you're 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks. That is where the woman shows her passport.
Yeah.
That is where, I'm very sorry, Mrs Jones, if you haven't got a British passport, you're going to have to pay for this. It's not literally as her waters break. You've misinterpreted the headline.
No, I haven't misinterpreted
well, you have,
it. I haven't misinterpreted it.
As a woman's going, you're not going to suddenly say, where's your passport?
Can you not see... Well, first
I've been
of all,
there.
two things. Can you not see that having to show your passport is a deterrent for people who might have an unclear immigration status, they might be waiting for asylum, for whatever reason? No, it's not the point. You want those women to go without antenatal care and potentially have their children...
They shouldn't be here.
But they are here, Nick.
Oh, well, let's not have any laws.
The question I'm asking is, do you want to live in a society where women like that, who are here for whatever reason, and you don't know the reason they're here, go without health care?
I want to live in a society, just this, Graham, I want to live in a society where people who need drugs to combat cancer can get them because the NHS has money, where people who need operations who've paid into the system for 6-7 decades, the NHS has the money. It is not spending £1.8 billion on health tourism.
The fact, or the question from my point of view, is this hospital, St George's, is it saying it would deny somebody treatment if they didn't have a passport? No. That's the key for me in terms of the principle. I would hate to end up in a system... I would hate to end up in a system that was like the American system, where someone gets knocked over and you have to ask them about their insurance before you do what is humanly caring or whatever and humane. Of course, I don't think anybody would sign up to that principle over here because of what we've inherited with the principles of the NHS. But I do feel that now that we're down this Brexit route, and we can go on about that all day, the fact of the matter is that we do have to look at what people are paying into the system, as Nick says, and understand who is acceptable. It doesn't mean they should be... not have access in emergency situations. But, for instance, if I go to Spain, I have to take my EU card with me, which means if I get injured or have an accident, I present that and I get complimentary treatment because of the relationship within the EU. There's going to be, whether you like it or not, there's going to be a tightening up of the system, and some of it, I think, is for good reason, purely on the basis that the NHS doesn't work properly.
you said 1.8 billion. I don't think...
A year, per annum.
For maternity, it's
not for maternity,
it's
but
180 million, which is a small amount given the whole
180 million.
Normal use of the NHS by foreign visitors, 1.8, not maternity, 1.8 billion across the whole thing.
Sure, but you can't... But then he gets his treatment fee in Spain in exchange, so you can't just take help from people who aren't in this country, who haven't got British passports. It depends how much money it is. If we're talking about comparative... I mean, we're talking about a system that's got 150 billion pounds a year goes on the NHS.
Yes, approximately.
If we're talking about a couple of 100 million, honestly...
million.
Oh, my God.
No, but this is just the start. This is just the start.
No,
we're talking about...
but
couple hundred million.
the cost of collecting and doing it probably costs you that. Now, I'm not saying I disagree with you. I'm saying I do think that the health service should be for about people who've paid into it. That's the point. But there are some things that it's just too difficult to collect the money. Now, it'll be very interesting. I hope someone's doing a study of your local hospital.
I hope so too.
I hope they're doing a proper piece of research to see what impact it has, what effect it has, how many people they turn around, so we can actually make a proper judgment on whether it was worth it or not.
I hope so too, but it's not just about the money, it's about the principle. We are creating, deliberately, an atmosphere of hostility for people who are foreign nationals. And if this was a perfect system, if this were a perfect system and there were no human error, it would be different. But we already have essentially ethnic profiling going on in schools. Schools have been asked to collect data about where children were born, foreign children. They've started only asking visibly minority children. They're not asking white children where they were born. They've been targeting, and this has been reported, children who are black or brown and asking them for data on their nationality. You can see easily a situation in which a white British person goes into a hospital.
Yeah, but surely if you've got a system... But surely if you've got a system...
Hold on,
sorry, you haven't. No.
Right, listen, you talk about we're deliberately doing this, we're deliberately doing that. What is deliberately happening here is a deliberate abuse of the NHS. This is the National Health Service. It's not the International Health Service. It's set up to serve people who have paid into it. My mum and my sister, by the way, are both National Health Services nurses. I respect the NHS massively. But there is almost a trade that's been deliberately set up now to bring people over here deliberately to defraud the NHS. I think it's outrageous. Now, do I think it's draconian that I'm going to say to someone, hi there, before you use these services, can I just check you're entitled to? No, I don't. I think it's basic, I think it's standard, and I think it's been missing for way too long. I don't just want to see this in this trust. I want to see this rolled out across the whole of the NHS. Emergency care is not going to be turned down. So if you're there, your waters are breaking, you will still be looked after, and rightly so. But what they're going to stop doing is, if you think you can come and wander in and get your entire labour looked after and paid for, you can't, and nor should you.
And what will the consequences of that be? You know,
hopefully,
and there's cost
people not coming to do that.
But the point is, these are women who are here who need antenatal care. If you put them off from seeking antenatal care at the earliest opportunity, you're possibly going to create problems which are going to cost the NHS more when they present as emergency
stop
cases.
them doing that.
I'm not saying I disagree with the principle of people paying into the NHS. The question is, are the first people you really want to go after pregnant women? Is that really who you want to start with? Not just because, as far as we know, they only cost the NHS 180 million. They are a fraction. And they are also the most vulnerable.
Do you accept that there is something called health tourism going on? That people are coming here deliberately? I don't know.
I think it's an emotive term, but I'm told that there are people deliberately exploiting the NHS.
What I want to know is how big is the scale of the problem?
Yeah, nobody knows because that research
let's do that piece of work and then
you can't make policies like
decisions.
this until you know for sure how much it's costing and how much you're going to save.
If you've got a system that doesn't prejudice, is the same for everyone, so that every one of us in any given situation has to produce some identification, doesn't that protect some of those people that you're worried about are being profiled?
You mean a universal identification? But there's two things. There's one, the ethnic profiling, and there's two, deterring people who, for whatever reason, do not have their documentation.
I think Greg's waters are broken. Greg's waters are broken.
I think we know the argument, and it's me next.